Hello. This interview is part of the series publicizing the 2023 conference of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. The conference is called CSICon, and it will take place in Las Vegas from October 26th to the 29th. If you're watching this soon after it's published, that's just a month or so away. Today, my guest is Teller, the somewhat quieter half of the magical partnership known as Penn and Teller. Unlike last year, Teller will be joining his partner in magic for a special event at the conference. This is some of what it says about Penn and Teller on the CSICon 2023 site. Penn and Teller are perhaps magic's most legendary duo. In their humble beginnings, they were busking on the streets of Philadelphia. Today, they have hosted acclaimed sold-out runs on Broadway and are the longest-running and one of the most beloved residential headline acts in Las Vegas history. Penn and Teller continue to defy labels and at times physics and good taste by redefining the genre of magic and inventing their own very distinct niche of comedy. Thanks for being here with me today, Teller.
Well, happy to be here.
So last year when I interviewed your partner in advance of both you guys appearing at CSICon for an interview with Julia Sweeney, of course, the assumption was that both of you guys would appear at CSICon with Julia Sweeney, but then something unexpected happened that changed the plan, and only Penn was able to attend. Let people know about that a little bit in case they don't know.
I had a quadruple bypass surgery, which was very successful, and I'm back on my feet.
Fantastic.
Rather simple, but not pleasant experience. I don't recommend it. If you're invited to take a vacation to have bypass surgery, don't accept. Go to the beach.
I remember my father having that exact thing happen. Now, they may have improved the techniques in probably that was 30 or 35 years ago, but in his recovery, he was miserable. He's basically, they wanted him to squeeze a pillow against his chest and said, "Doctors just want to torture people. That's the only reason they're making me do this."
I believe that the doctors are very well intentioned, but I believe that the act of using a saber saw to cut a hole, to cut right through the breastbone, and then reaching in and grabbing things out, and then pulling other things out of other parts of your body, as they did with my leg, and installing them there, and then sort of crisscrossing cables to pull the bones back together. I just don't think there's a pleasant way to do that yet. Eventually, I imagine we'll all get in little micro submarines and be able to go in and take care of these things with no problem. But right now, we're still in pretty barbaric stage of heart surgery.
So how long did this affect your performance schedule and your life in general?
I was out, I think, about 3 months, and then I worked slowly back into it.
Okay.
Last Christmas, Michael Carbonaro stood in for me at the Rio with Penn doing a show, and towards the beginning of that run, I decided to join them to do one thing per night. And I came in and did one thing per night, and that sort of got me warmed up again and back on my feet. And now here I am.
So this year you will be participating at CSICon, and the event is scheduled for Saturday of the conference, 3:30 to 5. And it is called Penn and Teller in Conversation with, not Julia Sweeney this year. This year it is Richard Wiseman. Here's the official description. This celebrity interview will explore their fascinating thoughts on magic, skepticism, James Randi, creativity, success, and much more. By the way, I also interviewed Wiseman in advance of last year's conference because he was a speaker. He was actually hosting the talk about James Randi, as I recall. He's such a pleasure to talk to, and he's a magician. Do you guys know each other?
Very well. Very well. Wiseman is actually inspired one of the bits that was in our live show for quite a long while. We called it Cowboy, and it was something in which we invited an audience member on stage to watch a close-up trick through a camera, and you saw the person's point of view as they were watching it. So it's sort of like the magicians refer to a trick called paper balls over the head, in which you take let's say a Kleenex and roll it up and put it right in front of the spectator's eyes, and then as you're placing it in your hand, you toss it right over the person's head, and then you do a big vanish here, and the person's much amused and mystified. Well, that's what this variation was about, and this variation took it to quite a great length, and had the audience able to see that person's point of view, And then there was a surprise in store for everybody.
Okay. So last year, I asked Penn about when it's appropriate for you to speak or not, and how much you were going to be talking during last year's conference. And this is what he said. I wrote the quote down. For the things that are Penn and Teller, we have Teller not be silent, but we have Teller speak a lot less than I do. Although you could also say that the suits enter into the decision. But I don't imagine we'll be in our suit, so it's more casual, and so Teller will talk. So when he first said suits enter into the decision, I actually thought that was a euphemism for management, and there was some ruling about it. But your literal work clothes that you wear, so why do the clothes enter into the decision for you to speak or not?
It's the difference between on stage and backstage. On stage we wear the suits. In real life, although we have often had the ambition to stay in those suits 24 hours a day, so that we would be fully in character if should anybody ever, like the house is burning down and I'm running out of the house and the firemen are outside, I would come out in my suit. But we've decided that that's just too much work. So when we're wearing our suits, we're basically in character, and in character means we don't own up to any talking that I might do. So that means that, for example, we used to do, and probably will again, do a trick called Mofo the Psychic Gorilla. Mofo is a gorilla mask stretched over a guitar amp sitting on top of an electronic device that looks like it's providing life to the gorilla mask, and Mofo talks. Well, I happen to be sitting at one side of the stage like this with a microphone in my hand, and you can decide whether I'm talking or not. But there are those who suspect that I might have provided the voice for Mofo the Psychic Gorilla.
So at the show that I was at, I noticed that you guys came outside and you stayed in the hallway talking to anyone who would come up to you to ask you questions. But do you not even talk under those circumstances?
No, I do. The show is over at that point.
Oh, okay. Even though you're in your suit, okay.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I've loosened the tie. It's backstage as far as I'm concerned. And since the pandemic, it's been we've deemed it too hazardous to do that after every show, because each of us has had COVID 4 times, and we don't need it again.
Wow. Anytime seriously?
No, well, I believe the first time I had it was right before it was identified, and it was a bad cough, but never hospitalization. And since then, it's just been like fatigue, and then it's gone in 3 days, or in one of those versions. Because I'm as vaccinated as a human being can be.
So what's the origin of you not speaking during performances with Penn? Did you do that when you performed on your own before you teamed up?
I did. It was my form of rebellion against stupid magic patter. Magicians tend to do this horrible narrative thing where they'll go, here I have a red ball. Now I am placing it in my hand. Now it has vanished. Well, that's just stupid. Why talk when all of that stuff is being shown? So I was bothered by that. I was also bothered by there's a sort of weird there's a branch of magic that I would call sort of woofty, where you talk about vibes, or you talk about history. At one time the great Houdini worked on this stage, and I feel his spirit is still with us tonight. That kind of patter always offended me, and still does. So not talking to me was presenting me with the challenge of getting the audience to follow what I'm doing on their own and essentially fool themselves. That is, put together what they were seeing in the way that I wanted them to see it. And there's a term in magic, misdirection, which I think is a terrible term. It's generally misunderstood to be, I'll make a big fuss over here so you don't look over here while I do something sneaky. That's just not what misdirection is. Misdirection is the story you get the audience to tell itself. It's the story you get the audience to tell itself. So if you want, for example, to persuade the audience that you're using an ordinary deck of cards, You don't say, this is an ordinary deck of cards. You hand them the cards and say, shuffle those, please. And they tell themselves the story that that's an ordinary deck of cards. Well, not speaking is right along those same lines. Not speaking means lying without talking. It means, for me, it means lying without talking. It means getting the audience to understand what it is that you want them to make believe for the period of the trick.
So when did you start being interested in magic? Not time-wise, but like what inspired you to do it? Like how'd you go from a Latin high school teacher to a performing arts career?
Well, there's two parts to that. When did I start getting interested in magic? When I was 5 and got terribly sick. I had toxic myocarditis, where this is part of the heart theme of our conversation.
Oh.
And was saved by a transfusion in a hospital, but had a long recovery period at home. And we had a television, which, of course, in those days was this little thing, that had a little screen this big with a big box. And there was a show on called Howdy Doody, which was a
Howdy Doody time.
Yes, it was a marionette cowboy, and he had several other characters on the show. And one of them was Clarabelle, the magic clown. And Clarabelle used to do magic tricks on screen, and Clarabelle at one point offered a Howdy Doody magic set. Now, my parents were interested in seeing me have something to do other than mope around the house as I was recovering, so they helped me. That is to say, they did all the work, or order a Howdy Doody magic set, which came. Wait, stay right where you are. Don't go away, because I'll show you exactly what a Howdy Doody magic set will look like.
Penn Teller has vanished.
Here is a Howdy Doody magic kit. It's flat. It's an envelope, and it has in it pieces that you punch out. Tilt this down a little bit so you see a little better. That you punch out and make into different props. And so, with my parents' help, following the directions, I punched those props out, and I played with them, and it just hit psychological bedrock. It just went bang. I know what I'm doing for the rest of my life. It became. It was one of those moments that there's a wonderful description in the play Equus, in which the psychiatrist describes how someone becomes obsessed with something forever, as magnets snapping together, and you can't pull them apart no matter what you do. Well, that's what happened to me with the Howdy Doody magic set. And
okay, but yet you went on for a career in teaching.
Yeah,
some difficult subjects. So, So what happened there?
So through my childhood, I pursued magic. In high school, I had the very interesting and worthwhile experience of having a drama coach. When you get to high school, if you've learned magic, you're told that magic is going to make you more popular. No! Magic does not make you more popular. Magic makes you obnoxious. The first thing you want to do in building a trust relationship with another person is not to lie to them, which is what magic is all about. But I had this very experience. I sort of shifted over into acting for a while in high school. And my drama coach was not only a really good drama coach, but he was a magician. And the two of us began to talk a lot about what makes for good magic, where magic fits into the big picture of the theater. Magic's a very odd. The analogy that I always make is there are engravings by people like Bosch or Bruegel or one of those old Dutch guys, in which there's this whole scene, and oddly outside just at the bottom of the frame, somebody's foot will be sticking out of the frame of the picture. Here we are. We're looking at a little Dutch town, and they're all having a big festival, and somebody at the bottom is sticking his foot out of the frame of the picture. And that's where magic fits. Magic doesn't live within the frame. Magic steps out of that. Magic sticks its foot out. So I continued to follow this. It was an intellectual pursuit in many ways, because magic is so much essentially an intellectual operation. I think it's one of the reasons why so many of the skeptics like magic as a form, because watching something with that double vision of here's what it appears to be, but here's what it is, and that double vision is really important, and it's part of the reason that it's such an intense experience to watch. You can't sit. No matter what anybody says, nobody sits and watches magic passively, right? They don't sit back and go, "Oh, that's lovely. It's floating through the sky." No, they don't. They all, even if they tell you that that's what they're doing, part of them is always going, "That's what it looks like. How can that be happening? How can that be happening?" And this conflict, this what you see versus what you know, shoots off sparks that makes it a very special and very compelling sort of form. Well, now it comes to my college days. And in my college days, I decided that I would do what my father said to do. My father said, you don't go to college to learn a trade. You go to college to become an educated person. So I thought, well, goodness gracious, what can I study that is the province of an educated person? The answer came back: classics. What have people studied as their civilizing influence for hundreds and hundreds of years? And the answer came back: classics. So I specialized in Latin and Greek with a big component of music on the side. None of this practical for real life. Then I finished college, and what am I facing? The Vietnam War. And I remember that I was visiting my parents. I was at their house when they did the countdown of people being selected for being taken in as soldiers. And we got all the way to like 364, and I thought, where's my number? Where's my number? Then I went back and checked, and I was number 3. So I was on the platter to be served up to the Vietnam War. So at that time, the U.S. was doing deferments for people who were school teachers. And so quickly, I became a school teacher. And the only thing I was qualified to teach was Latin. And the only place that was available for me to teach, I employed a teacher's employment agency, was in a suburb of Trenton, New Jersey, called Lawrence Township. I got a job there under a wonderful supervising teacher named Bernice Holcomb, who I believe has since passed away, but who understood. Her son had been in Vietnam, and she was very understanding of the fact that I was coming in with no skill at teaching, zero, no teaching credits. No, the only reason they had me in there was they couldn't find another Latin teacher. So I came in and I taught Latin for 6 years, but meanwhile, of course, pursued the magic as an avocation, doing shows at libraries and things like that. And comes to 1975, and my best friend from college, Uri Geller, who I met in the music department in college, had met Penn. And they had gotten along splendidly. They're both extremely funny people. I'm not really a funny person at all. I have other usefulnesses, but funny is not my strong suit.
I think people would dispute that, but
they might, but it's not a natural talent if there's any of it there. They had spent a lot of time together and gotten on really, really well. And Weir, who is brilliant, did a series of concerts. Weir had a knack for making arrangements of classical music that would simultaneously delight you musically and make you smile or make you laugh. He had on his concerts, he had Penn, because Penn had just come back from the Ringling Brothers Clown College and learned to ride a unicycle, and he could also juggle. He's a marvelous juggler. On one of Weir's concerts, he wanted to do the saber dance, and thought it would be amusing to have Penn ride in on a unicycle, juggling plumber's plungers and throwing them around Weir against the board in a parody of a carnival knife throwing act. And he wanted me to do something there. He had me recite a poem about Othmar Scheck. That's where the three of us first encountered each other. And the three of us became an organization. It happened this way. I was at home. Weir and Penn called me up. It was spring of 1975, and they said, Penn said, I can get you a job this summer doing magic at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. It's run now by a clown college buddy of mine. And I said, that sounds great. Penn says, it goes through October. I said, oh.
Oh, that's trouble with the school season.
Yeah, yeah. I said, that's when school starts. And Penn said, yes, that's what I had in mind. And so I went in and I sort of negotiated with the school to take a year's leave of absence, which was my father always said about me, you will never starve in an alley. You're not the kind of person who will do that. So I hedged my bet. So if I were about to starve in an alley in a year, I would be able to come back and continue my.
So were you looking at that as an insurance policy, but you really did think you were going to then go into the performing arts full time?
I did think that. But I wanted that insurance policy.
Yeah, that's wise.
And then that fall in October, when I found that I didn't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and start my car in the freezing cold to go in and sit in a depressing room full of coffee drinking school teachers marking test papers who were all depressed about their lives, I realized that I had made a good choice, and I was very happy to be getting up late.
So what did your family think about that, by the way?
They appreciated the fact that I had taken the year's leave of absence as a security thing, and both my parents. If you'll see in the background here, a lot of paintings. Both of my parents were artists, and they met in art school. And early in their marriage, my father learned a trade. He learned to do lettering for advertisements. It's commercial art lettering for advertisements, because his buddy said, well, you'll be able to take care of your family with this, and you won't be able to do that with painting. So my father didn't continue to try to earn a living painting. He did a year's worth of cartoons, thinking he could become a cartoonist, and failed to sell those to the local paper in Philadelphia, and just became a commercial artist. So I think both of them had this longing for some part of them to be in the arts. So I think they understood completely, and they were terrific about it. They along with Penn's parents and my high school acting mentor, they loaned us money for our lighting setup that we took on our shows. And we did a 3-man show called the Asparagus Valley Cultural Society for 6 years. And it was a very good show.
So let's talk a little bit about your long-running Vegas show. So I came to the show in 2017 with a group from CSICon and loved it. If I were to go again this year, will the acts I'd see from, how long ago is that? 5-6 years, be substantially different? Do you guys change it up frequently? How does that work?
Yes, we do. You might see maybe one thing that you had seen the last time you were here.
Well, I hope I would see Elsie again. That was amazing.
Okay, then it would be 2. Elsie is in the current lineup. We have a television show on the CW network called Penn Teller Fool Us. And it requires us to end each show with a new piece of magic. This is a very difficult thing to do, because magic is not something magic is not like writing a new song for your guitar. Magic is like saying, I think the idea of a guitar is pretty nice. Let's build one of those. Oh, that's not. Let's build a different one of those. All right, now the guitar is working. Now that's the kind of sounds it makes. And now let's think about writing a song. Magic is a considerably difficult art form to do, but we do it. And one of the things that has driven us to do so much new material is having that television show, hungry for new material.
So, yeah, Elsie, for people who don't know, this is the disappearing elephant, which is astounding. I was in like the 3rd or 4th row, so right up front, you let the audience stand around the cow just as an elephant. And
cow? That's an elephant. It's an elephant. How dare you call that a cow?
It just disappears. It's amazing. Whenever I see magic on television, which I have seen a lot, I'm always thinking, I mean, it probably isn't, but I'm always thinking, well, it could be some kind of editing effect. But when you're sitting there and it's right in front of you, your brain can't think that. And it's just astounding to see something like that.
I'm glad you like it. I'm sure Elsie appreciates the applause.
So yeah, so tell me about the creative process. Is it just you guys who come up with the new and as you said for Fool Us, and for your show, or do you hire other people to help out in that? How does this work?
We do everything. I mean, we do all of the above. We sometimes we adapt things that we find in old books. Sometimes we just come up. I mean, I'll give you an example. Here's one that's in the show right now. For years, Penn and I have talked about the idea of trying to physicalize the cliche of the needle in the haystack. We think the idea of dropping a needle into a haystack and then finding it miraculously is a pretty funny idea. And so this year, the creative process is always back and forth between Penn and me. I mean, it's just we ride on top of everything else. But I was sitting in my TV room and reading a magic book, and it suddenly crossed my mind how we could create that turn that into an actual trick. And the idea that I had was, if I were holding a thread like this, and we dumped an entire haystack on me, and a selected needle appeared on that thread, that would be a good realization of the needle in the haystack. We started to work on that, discovered the problems with it, the visibility of the needle and that sort of thing for the live show. And our friend Jandro, who is a wonderful magician from Spain, who comes over and brainstorms with us often when it comes time to work on new material, suggested that we combine that with a card trick so that the person selects not only one of 52 needles, but one of 52 cards, throws the needle and the cards into a big sort of rectangular chicken wire box of hay, and then dumps all of that on my head. And what lands is when the hay falls away, there's the thread, and it's got the needle, and it's got the card impaled on it. And it's a real ball buster of a trick, and I'm very proud of how we figured out how to do it. But that's an old Penn and Teller idea that Teller makes one step on. Then we get in there, and now with Jandro and Penn and everybody else contributing, there's another step that goes on that. And then finally it comes out to what it is. So there's no straight path. Sometimes, one of us, like Penn, will come in with an idea that he just says, I think we should do this. He's a very, we did a couple of years ago, we did a plate spinning thing in which we spun, I think, 12, maybe 10, 12 plates on sticks. And the audience was thinking of a number, and the only plate to survive our very bad plate spinning was the number that the audience was thinking of. That's really all a Penn. That's a Penn idea that he's just crazy about, and that I think you'll probably see on stage sometime soon.
And so that's kind of like juggling. So you mentioned that Penn went to clown college. I have heard him say, I think he might have told me in an interview, that he had a disdain for magic early on. So how did he get turned around? Was that you that turned him around?
He tells me that's the case. I mean, in the sense that my interest in skepticism was generated largely by Penn's passion for it, specifically his hatred for a particular mentalist. I think his interest in magic comes from spending so much time with me, telling him how interesting a form it is. Just exploring with him, seeing with him how intellectually exciting magic is. And magic is so often depicted as this sort of mindless, pointless activities. Here I have a box that doesn't exist anywhere in the real world. I will show it empty for no purpose, and now I will pull out silk handkerchiefs which no other human being has ever seen. Then they're covered with dragons and stars, and you pull them out and you go, yada! I've accomplished something. I mean, there's just nothing going on there. That's what he had seen, basically, in terms of magic. He'd seen the pointless I guess what you'd call it is a feat of activity. That's what they used to call it. It was a feat of activity, but without any intellectual component, without anything, without any hook uh, uh, to draw your mind in and make you think. Because that's the joy of magic is you can take it, you get all of those levels all at the same time, right? You get the oh my God, and then you get the oh, how are they doing it? Oh, maybe it could be that. No, that can't be it. It reminds me a little bit of the way Alfred Hitchcock used to talk about suspense thrillers. He used to say that's a refrigerator moment, and what he meant was after you get home after seeing that movie, you think back and you go, well, what about that moment? And you're doing that as you're opening the refrigerator to take out your late night snack.
It sticks with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of figuring out tricks, the whole idea of your show, Fool Us, where did that come from to do a show like that?
It came from a misunderstanding. I wrote Penn an email that said, wouldn't it be interesting to have people tailor make magic tricks just for us and have the audience at home see them preparing all of the magic tricks and then watch them perform those tricks for us and then see whether we could come in and figure them out. So that you would be backstage with the magicians, right? You'd be seeing where the wires all were, and then you'd be seeing whether or not we could detect where the wires were.
Mm.
And he read that and he said, oh, that's a great idea. We should do that sometime. But he didn't actually read it very carefully. He thought that this was just an idea for getting magicians on and we would try to figure out their tricks. Well, turns out that's a pretty good idea. So by my idea getting misunderstood, we got a really good idea for a show. Yeah.
Has anyone ever fooled you on the show?
Oh, many times.
Yeah. Okay.
We're formed. I forget what it is. It's something like 12% of the time we're fooled. Something like that. So it's a pretty high ratio. And it gets harder as the years go by because when the show was first on, no legitimate magician would really want to come on because they would go, well, Penn and Teller are just going to expose my tricks. Well, once they saw what we actually do, which is to first of all, no one gets on that show who's not very good, right? So this is not amateur hour. This is excellent professional magic. So everybody who comes on automatically wins, right? Because they're getting a great TV spot. But they come on, and whether or not we figure out the trick, the first thing we do is talk about what they've done beautifully. And when magicians caught on to the idea that, well, this is a no-lose situation. Either I go home with a trophy for fooling Penn and Teller, or I go home with the best TV spot I'll ever have with Penn and Teller praising the hell out of me. So when magicians caught on to that, then really good magicians started to come on the show all the time. And now in its 10th, well, it's really the 11th season, but I won't argue with that. Now, really, really good magicians come on, and they're really good, and they can really fool us. And so we've actually become part of the magic community, which we really weren't very much prior to Fool Us. We were always outsiders.
There was an article in the New York Times just a month ago or so, July, I think, that attempted to rehabilitate Uri Geller. It was called "The End of the Magic World's 50-Year Grudge." Did you catch that?
I did.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think the grudge is over?
No. I mean, it was just a sort of a irritatingly half-assed article to my way of thinking.
Yeah, one of the things I wrote it down here, he said, watching the Geller haters now is like watching people run into a nursery school shouting, "There is no Santa Claus." I mean, there was a lot of pushback on this article. Yeah,
well, and there should be, because Geller really did try to give the impression that he was not doing magic tricks, and tried to, even, I think even in the article, isn't there some mention of some him guiding some people to drill for oil or some such nonsense?
Yeah, he absolutely did that.
I just find that persistently insulting. It just doesn't. For a long time, Geller was trying to give the impression, I believe, that he was a genuine psychic, and and now he sort of stepped back and said, no, actually, I'm just an entertainer, which is what he should have said to begin with. Sloppy thinking is never fun.
Yeah, so speaking of sloppy thinking, your favorite, your show that was my favorite was How to Be Bullshit, because it was like all about skepticism. It ran for, I looked this up, just shy of 90 episodes from 2003 to 2010. So what sparked your interest in doing that show?
The idea of telling the truth about things that people take for granted but that are not true, but doing it in an undignified way, that is, doing it in a way that was fun. I mean, bullshit is still. We get lots of people who come to the show who tell me afterwards, I was in Afghanistan and we had your full set of bullshit there. We just loved it. It's now you wouldn't get. I dare say, I don't want to be insulting at all, but I don't think you would get a video from a skeptics conference that people in Afghanistan would watch for fun. And the idea was to take these topics that were skeptic topics essentially, and make them celebrate them, make them enjoyable, make them full of sex and jokes and obscenity and all that sort of thing. And that was that's what I think we accomplished pretty well.
Yeah. What was your favorite episode? So many.
There are so many. I mean, there's a part of me that is still there's so many. There's a part of me that still just loves the bottled water one because it still persists to this day. Yeah, and I can't take credit for what was some of the funniest stuff in that. The idea of setting up in a restaurant, fancy restaurant in Los Angeles, a water steward who would come to your table with all sorts of different choices of bottled water and ask you to, taste them to distinguish the different flavors of water. This one came from a glacier. This one came from the mountains of Japan. And then later on revealed to the customers who had made this very fine distinction of palate that all of the bottles had been filled from the garden hose behind the restaurant. There's something really charming about that. There's much. Certainly the vaccine episode persists in being tremendously important. And you'll every time anti-vaxxers make a big stink, you see that very rather worn-looking video pop up, because it's really a significant thing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you had blowback from, some type of episodes more than others. Like I doubt, Big Water was angry and contacted you. But I heard the 9/11 truthers were up in arms about that episode, and chiropractors didn't like your chiropractic episode.
I guess perhaps Penn's phrase of baby twisting motherfuckers.
Not the 9/11 truthers. That applies to chiropractors.
Perhaps that got under some chiropractor's skin.
Oh, man. Yeah. So what topic do you wish you had covered but didn't have time to? Something maybe that's appeared in the last, since the series is over, that may be a new topic.
I mean, the thing about it is, since that series has been over, with the way the internet has worked, there is it's no achievement to point out that something is bullshit, because really 95% of the stuff that's coming at us is bullshit. we had a president who lied innumerable times and just kept going on it. I mean, the truth becomes a complete anomaly in the current culture. I don't know what we would do if we were doing it today, but I don't think the thing about bullshit was we were showing people stuff that they were taking for granted that they thought was true. Well, now nobody thinks anything is true. So I don't know what we would be doing nowadays.
So the one thing that Penn had said that he had wanted to do if there was another season and never did was he wanted to do an episode titled Bullshit of Bullshit. So like to pick an episode that he thought he would like to totally redo because you guys, didn't cover it I don't know if I'd say correctly or enough. Yeah,
I mean, certainly the episode that we did in which we said we don't think there's adequate information on global warming
I remember that one. Yeah.
to assume that it's anthropogenic. Um, I think that would be a different episode now because now we do have the information. I mean, we were very careful on things that we didn't on things that we were uncertain about to say we're uncertain about these. But that means that now, when there are certain things that we're really quite certain about, we would do them differently.
Okay, well, I think we can call it a wrap there. Thanks so much again for your time today. I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life in Vegas soon.
Well, I'll attempt to be there without my heart being on the floor beside me.
Please, please.